So happy to be here in Gothenburg. We just heard the voice of one of the city's most famous artists, Jens Lekman, performing his postcard number 19, a track that he wrote in May this year, and it was inspired by a short story of a Swiss author.
That would be
That
me.
is you.
Okay.
Yeah. You hadn't heard the song before,
No,
Peter?
no, I haven't. Jan told me today,
Yeah.
my editor.
Your editor at Thorén och Lindskog. But you knew which short story it referred to, you said?
Well, he wrote on his homepage that it's about a man, that he saw a young couple on a tramway, and I wrote a story about a man who sees a young couple on a bus, so I guess that must be the story. It's called Sweet Dreams.
Mm. Does this happen a lot to you, that people get inspired and I don't know, paint pictures out of your books, or?
I think it happens a lot in art in general. I mean, I get inspired, people get inspired. I mean, you don't always know when people are inspired by your work. Sometimes you meet someone and years later they tell you that they were inspired by something. But I'm constantly inspired by music, by paintings, by films, by architecture. So I guess it's just a natural thing.
Mm. I was about to ask about music, because paintings, architecture is pretty obvious when you read your books. And music, you have some music going on in the background, but it's not that in the foreground as art, I think, or not in Agnes.
I think, well, I do listen to music when I write quite often. Not always, but less and less, but I used to. And for the book that will come out next in February, I listened a lot to Bach while I was writing it, because I had some idea about the structure of the book. That's, well, anyway. But I guess that because I played the recorder as a young person till 19, 20, recorder, the Blockflöte. What is it in Swedish?
Blockflöte.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a joke. It's you can play it seriously. It's not just a children's instrument. It's really a beautiful instrument. And my theory is that my writing was influenced by Baroque music. This very structured music. Not directly, but that somehow I have the structures in my head because I played so much of this music that somehow maybe it formed my aesthetic feelings or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't think they laugh because of that you can't play it seriously because of the names Blockflöte and
okay.
Blockflöte.
No, because when
if you say Blockflöte, they will all know what you played.
Because when you say in German, in Switzerland, when you say you play this instrument, then people think, well, it's what children play at 6 or 7 before.
Yeah, you have to start
playing.
there in Sweden as well. But you can't stay there, obviously.
Yeah.
And Agnes, we should say, was just released in Swedish. You have 2 books published in Swedish, the other one being 7 years, or 7 år, which came a couple of years ago.
I don't even remember. 2 years? 3 years?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And Agnes this spring or late 2014. So, and there are some music going on. Agnes, the main character, the main female character in the book, is a cellist, and she plays...
Oh yeah, right. I forgot.
She plays a lot of Schubert. And then she switches, because she's in a quartet, a string quartet with her friends, and they switch to Mozart. And the narrator, the male narrator, says, "I hate Mozart." And she too. Agnes too. So I was wondering there, what do you have against Mozart?
No, I don't hate him, but it's just Schubert is closer to me than Mozart. I know everybody. I mean, everybody I know that plays music says that he's the greatest. I mean, Mozart is just a genius, and he certainly is. But maybe I'm more a romantic music listener. So to me, Mozart sometimes is a bit too well done. I don't know. I like romantic music. I mean, not music from the Romantic period.
For sure. But You said before that you listen a lot to music, but can you listen to music while you're writing?
Yeah, yeah. Not anything, but usually it's piano music, jazz, Keith Jarrett, or sometimes what's his name? Well, not easy listening, but I would say jazz that's not too aggressive, and it's somehow it's not. I don't even hear it anymore after a while. It's just somehow to distract my ears or something. I have a feeling that it's, or maybe it gives me some kind of rhythm, and then the music disappears while I'm writing, and when it stops, for example, and the CD is finished, then I don't realize it, and I just write on. But very often it's easier to get into writing when I listen to music.
When do you prefer to write?
In the morning.
In the morning.
I'm a morning writer. Yeah.
Okay. And how could you tell us about like a normal day when you're writing?
Well, when my children go to school in the morning, so when they are out of the house, I usually go to my office downstairs and, yeah, sit on my comfortable chair and start writing. And then I write till maybe 12 or 1 o'clock. And that's about it. I mean, I can't write more than 4 or 5 hours. And the rest of the day I just do other things like organizing lectures or whatever. But the writing is never more than 4 to 5 hours. It's you have to be quite concentrated, and you're not in a hurry. I mean, when you write a book, you have time, so you shouldn't hurry, I think.
You wrote a short article called "Mein Stil," my style, where you say that you rewrite and rearrange your texts 20 or 30 or even more times than that. And that text is a bit some years old, but is that still the case that you rewrite that much?
Yeah, I mean a novel. A novel I'm maybe rereading 10 times, but with short stories it's often 20, 30 times. Yeah, it's just I have to do it. I mean, it's when I write, I get into the text very much, so I can't really judge the language while I'm writing because I'm really seeing images and then translating them into language. So I have to reread them over and over again. And if you have read a sentence 20 times and it still works, then it's usually okay. But that's the only way for me to find out if a sentence works, to just reread it many, many times.
I read in another article that perhaps you wrote it on your homepage, that one thing that you do is that you often use the letter A for your male character when you're starting to write a new book or a new story, and that you later on you change the name to something else.
I don't do that anymore. Yeah,
you don't?
I remember that I once wrote that, but doesn't work. I did that with the books that I wrote before Agnes, but it doesn't work. A person has to have a name, and the name never changes usually. I just had one case where I had to change the name. There was Unformed Landscape, a novel that takes part in northern Norway, and there was a child named Randy, and just before the book came out, I suddenly wasn't sure anymore whether that was actually a boy's name. So I called up there and asked them, and they said, no, it's a girl's name. So I had to change that name, and that was difficult, even though it's only a minor character. So usually I have to have a name when I start.
All right. But I was thinking about the letter A, because Agnes obviously is that letter. In 7 Years, the male protagonist is called Alexander.
In my new novel, it's Astrid. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Såkamp.de, the homepage of your...
Okay, yeah.
Or S. Fisher, sorry.
S. Fisher, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. They wrote that there, yes. So there seems to be an affinity to names starting with the letter A.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the letter A is a beautiful letter, but well, I'm usually looking for normal names. I'm not looking for special or extreme names. And A is a nice letter. It's a nice sound. Maybe it's that. An E name is different. And yeah.
But Agnes wasn't supposed to be called Agnes from the beginning. She was supposed to have a Danish name.
Yeah, Solveig.
And
Well,
and why did you?
I had.
Why did you want to have a Danish name? If we start there.
I have always had a relationship to Denmark through mostly women. No, I've traveled there, and I had my former girlfriend was Danish, and my now girlfriend is half Danish. I don't know. Maybe that's like the letter A, just by accident.
Okay.
I didn't look for Danish women, but anyway, and I had this name in my mind. I couldn't remember it, but I knew that there was a beautiful name from Denmark that I would like to take. And then I had to look through a phone book from Denmark to find it. But Solveig is a very seldom name, so I had to read the whole book. And finally I found it, and then I realized it's not possible. You can't take Solveig because it's so charged with Peer Gynt by Ibsen. It's such a literary name that you can't just choose it for a character just like that, or at least it would say something that I didn't want to say. So then I was looking for a poem by Keats and leafed through a book by Keats, and I just found that name, Agnes, and it was perfect.
And you quote the Keats poem at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, the poem has something to do with the book, but in quite a complicated way, so let's not talk about that. My English is not good enough to explain that.
Your first note on Alice was made on the 12th of February 1993. That's
in Denmark.
In Denmark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again.
Yeah. But it would take you 5 more years before it was published. What happened during those 5 years with the book?
Well, I wrote Agnes in like 3 months, approximately, as a short story, a long short story, like 80 pages, half as long as the book is now, and then I tried to sell it to a publisher together with other short stories, collection of short stories, and nobody wanted to publish it, which is very often the case because short stories sell much less than novels. And then I put it away, and there was a time when I just started to work as a journalist, and I did a lot of journalism these years. And after a few years, I realized I want to do something with that. I still believed in the stories, so I took it out. I made a radio play first out of the text, and then I made the novel. So I didn't work for 5 years. It was mostly in the drawer. I would say I worked maybe 9 months all in all.
Okay. But you were convinced that you wanted to finish this story, so to speak, because you, with 20 or something, you realized that you wanted to be an author on a New Year's Eve?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's very long time ago. So
it's a good story too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's better than the 2nd of January.
Well, New Year's Eve is an evening where you make decisions, don't you?
For sure.
To stop smoking or to become a writer.
Yeah. And then what happened? You wrote some texts that you weren't very happy with, and then.
Well, it was the typical thing when you're 20. You write a text, and one day you think it's absolute work of genius, and the next day you think it's complete crap and you should throw it away. So I was going up and down, and I never really was persuaded of the texts. I think Hemingway once said, a text is good when you don't, wenn dir nicht peinlich ist, when
you're not embarrassed by the.
Yeah. And I think Agnes was the first book that didn't embarrass me when I showed it to other people.
And that was the 80 pages version then? Yeah.
And some stories that I wrote along with it, that came out just after Agnes as a short story collection. So they were actually written at the same time.
Right. But because when reading about you, it's also one thing that keeps popping up is that you have had a lot of different type of jobs, and that you studied to become an accountant, and you worked as an accountant in Paris and New York as well.
Well, New York was kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
It's more like selling rail tickets for Europe to American travel agencies.
Mm. And you've been a night porter as well at a hotel?
Yeah, yeah.
Which everybody author should do, you said
exactly,
in an interview.
yeah.
How come?
Well, it's an easy job. I mean, you have lots of time. You sit around at night. You can do nothing else. There was no internet at that time, so you would just sit there and wait, and then so you have a lot of time and time to think.
Mm.
And it's good to have in your CV to say that you were a night porter.
For sure. It's also a good thing. But when you wanted, as a child, you wanted to be a shipbuilder, a professor, a copywriter, a photographer, and you wanted to work in advertising, which you did.
A cook also.
A cook, you want to, yeah. But you got to be everything in one, so to speak, I suppose. You
In a
can
way,
imagine all these different types of jobs as
I guess
a
so,
writer.
yeah. And especially as a journalist, where you can see into all kinds of lives and jobs, and that's the good thing. You don't have to do it for your whole life. You just go there and see, and be a cook for a week, and then next week you're something else.
Mm.
Great job.
Did you learn anything as a journalist that is still valid today for you as a writer?
Well, first of all, research. To go out and talk to people, to not to be shy and to just go anywhere. I mean, today when my children ask me something, what's that? And I just, let's go in. And if it's not allowed, they will throw us out. But I'm not afraid to just open a door and see. So you see lots of things that you wouldn't see if you would always be shy about things. And also just to write. I mean, it's a great training to write lots of texts every day, and then every day it's published, and then you get feedback from your readers, and they tell you if it's good or not. So in a way, it's a great training to just do it and do it and do it and do it. And you can try out things because it's forgotten in 2 days. So it's not so. It's different from writing a book. When I write a book, I want it to be good, but in journalism, I could try out things that I probably wouldn't try out in a book.
Mm. Can you miss the fast response from readers as an author? I mean, Seriken, your latest collection of short stories, was released 2011. Next year is the year of your.
There was a novel in between.
There was another one.
Yeah,
okay.
In 2013, I think.
Okay. But still, you have years when you don't hear from, or do you hear a lot from the readers?
Not really, no. But that's okay. I mean, I don't. It would be too much if they would all write to you. No, it's okay. I like that too. I mean, I also like, and especially now, as I feel I pretty much know what I want to do. I don't need constant response from people. I like to work on a text for a year and being the only one who knows about this text. I don't talk about my texts while I'm writing them, or not much, and I don't show them to anybody. It's really my thing, and that's also great.
Mm. In your Bamberg poetic lectures, I think you would call it in English, you said that you also like the time in between projects that can be very stressful to writers. They just finished one novel, they are going to start on something new, but they don't know what. Why is it these in-between gaps? Why are those attractive to you?
I'm actually in one of these times right now because I just finished a novel. Because everything is possible. I mean, it's like when you finish your school. What's the say the high school? When you finished your high school and you haven't started studying yet, then you could do anything. You could travel around the world, or you could study whatever you want, and that's it's insecure, but it's also a great moment. There's this freedom of doing whatever you want. And when you're not afraid, I mean, today I'm not afraid not to have any ideas anymore. So I'm pretty confident that someday I will have another idea. Just hope that it's not in 2 years only.
Sure. You just finished the new novel that is going to be published in Germany
In February.
End
End of February.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also just finished the translation of The Little Prince into German. How is the work as a translator different from that? Because I imagine there are similarities between translating and writing or creating a new world.
The pay is even worse when you translate. It's awful.
Okay.
I think I told Jan today I would have made more money by cleaning offices than by translating this book. It's really amazing how little translators are paid. Well, there is a text, so in a way that makes it easier. But then on the other hand, you might not be. You might, when you read the text, would like to do it differently, but you can't because there is an original. You can take some freedoms, but you shouldn't just change things. So that made it more difficult in a way. And then there is French. I mean, I do speak French quite well, but I still had to look up lots of words. I was amazed how many words I knew but didn't really know the exact translation. Knowing a language is not the same thing as actually being able to translate from this language.
No. So, but you lived in Paris for a while, as we said, and then you moved to New York, and then that was with the intention of starting a book, right? To start writing as an author.
Or to just make experiences. I think I did already write before I went there, but I also wrote in Paris. But I just wanted to see as many things as I could and to learn as many things as I could. So when I got the chance to go to New York, I said, well, I had the feeling that a writer has to make experiences. And that was a way to see another place.
For sure. And Agnes is a novel that is, it happens in Chicago, right? It's set in Chicago. And you wrote also in this Bamber or some text that you need to have a specific place from the beginning to start with. So why is that important?
Well, I have to have very concrete images, so I can't. I once in a book I didn't really decide where they would live. I had the apartment in my mind, but I didn't really know where the apartment was, either in Zurich or in Winterthur. And I realized that I couldn't write it because I have to know what you see when you look out of the window and how it feels and all these things. I couldn't imagine to describe a place that even if the place would be invented, I would have to know exactly how it looks and how it feels.
And how come you didn't place the plot in New York then, if it was there you lived?
To me, New York was too. First of all, I knew it too well, maybe, and it was too much a city that everybody has images. And when I say New York, everybody thinks of yellow cabs and skyscrapers, and so it was better to choose a place that not everybody knows, and that's maybe. I never liked the first place. When I write about an architect, I don't write about the best architect in the world. I write about an average architect. When I choose a city, I don't take the biggest or the greatest city. I take some smaller city. So I like the not the losers, but the smaller things, the less extreme things. And then also Chicago is the city of Ernest Hemingway. That might have been a reason, because he was very important to me at that time.
Yeah, because he shows up here. The narrator goes to a dinner where they say that that's where Hemingway actually was born, Oak Ridge, right? Or
Oakwood or Oak, some oak.
Some oak. I'm gonna have a look. Well, it doesn't. Oak Park.
Oak Park, yeah, Illinois.
But and you said I read an interview with you in a Pupils magazine called F79, where they ask you about what you read in school. them being pupils wanting to know what their favorite author read as a kid. And you quote Hemingway there, and he's in the book as well, so he seems to be important. What have you learned from him?
Well, I always was a big reader, and I think the first authors that I read systematically, where I actually realized there is an author and I want to read everything that he wrote, was Edgar Allan Poe, I think, and then strangely Ibsen, Henrik Ibsen, and Hemingway to me was just the first time that I read an author where I had the feeling it's not reading, it's really living in his stories. He had this ability to make you feel as if you were there. And I think that's what he wanted. He said that I want to say how it was. And I was completely fascinated by that. And I wanted to do it as well, to create not language, but images or even spaces. Maybe it's old-fashioned, but I still think that's what I want to do.
But speaking again of the location of a story, Chicago, it's called the Windy City, and I don't know if you know, but it's up for debate if that has to do with the chilly winds or not. Could be some allusions to the political climate in the 20s, I think.
I haven't heard that.
But anyways, it's a cold city. I've just been there once, but I remember it as very windy and very cold in the winter.
Almost as cold as Gothenburg.
Yeah,
today.
Exactly, and almost as windy. But was that one of the reasons as well? Because you could read into the story that...
Well, it's hard to say if the chicken or the egg was first. I mean, once I decide that it's going to be Chicago, then of course it's cold, and then the cold gets into the text. I don't remember whether I chose it because it was cold or whether it was just cold because I chose it. I once a Brazilian student said to me that Agnes couldn't happen in Brazil. And I said, sure, it could. I mean, it would be a different book, of course. It wouldn't snow, obviously. But I think you could also write in Brazil, but it would just change many things.
But basically, it's a love story about a Swiss journalist / author who sits in the public library and reads a lot about trains, and especially about the Pullman strike. And he meets a young woman who's actually writing her thesis or her dissertation at the university in Chicago, and they fall in love. And one day she suggests to him that the author should write their story. And that is perhaps the place where the trouble starts in their relationship, right? How come?
Well, my idea was not so much about writing, it was more about images we make ourselves of each other. That we are constantly, when we meet someone, we instantly make an image, and then when the relationship develops, usually the image stays the same. And then these images somehow we try to make people according to the images we have of them. I'm very often in schools with Agnes, and I tell the children it's like when your parents say what you did is es passt nicht zu dir. It's not. How would you say that in English? It's not.
Yeah, it doesn't fit you or
it
something.
It doesn't fit you, yeah. And then I say, of course it fits you. It's just it doesn't fit the image they have of you. So in a way, when we make ourselves images of other people, we try to force them to be like the images we have, and that's something I wanted to write about. Yeah. So while he writes a text, he shows in a way what's his image of Agnes, and that image is not completely under control.
But it's also, of course, then a book about literature and about writing literature, and he talks about the flow of pictures in his head that comes, and when that shuts off, he stops writing because then it's no idea, no use to sit around and wait for more. And he talks about the film in his mind that he writes down. Does that work the same way for you? Is that
pretty much? Yeah, yeah. It's really I think we are probably the first generation. I mean, my generation is probably the first generation that has seen more films than we have read books. I mean, I've read lots of books, but I've also seen lots of films. So maybe that seeing so many films changes our way of writing. I don't know. At least that's really, it's writing for me was never finding the most beautiful words or creating the most complicated sentence structure or whatever. It was really about creating images, and that's why language is not, it's, of course it's very important, but it's not on this surface level. It's not, let's see how beautiful I can write. That never interested me. It's really how can I create with words images in the heads of the readers.
I said that the difficulty starts when she asks him to write the story. That's not completely true, because he starts off writing their story and they argue about what is true and what is not, and they find out that they have totally different perspectives of things. Like, was it a Chinese restaurant we went to, or was it a Italian? I don't know. But the real problem starts when he is when he's writing about what is going to come next, the future. And there it turns into a kind of role play, I would say. Could you explain that to the audience?
Well, in the beginning it's just fun. I mean, he says, you when you come tomorrow to my place, you will wear the blue dress, and then she does it, and that's fun. And he predicts how she will react to his question, do you want to live with me? And then she says, well, what does she do in your text? And so it's, in the beginning it's a game, but then at some point the character in his story gets his own life or her own life and does things that Agnes doesn't want to do. Or and that's when the image and the reality somehow collide or go apart.
And that is a theme that you've been following in throughout your books, your short stories and novels as well, right? The gap or the overlap between fiction and the real world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not my invention. I think
No,
that's for many artists, it's a big theme, because we are constantly creating fiction and we live in a real world. So, of course, also as a painter, when you paint yourself with your model, it's a very common subject in painting. It's constantly, why do we do that? In the last book I wrote about a painter, and I got some material from Giacometti, the Swiss painter, and he's constantly asking himself, why am I painting? I mean, because there is reality, it's much richer than whatever I can put on a screen. So why do we do that? Why do we create stories? It's somehow strange, yeah. But still, I mean, there are readers, so why shouldn't there be writers?
For sure, for sure. But do you ask yourself that question when you're at home writing?
Not in a way that would make me stop writing, but it is a strange thing to write stories. And I just like doing it, so I'm doing it anyway. But sometimes you have a feeling it's not really work. I mean, other people are building houses or baking bread, or I mean, that's something real. But stories, you should see me while I'm working. I just sit there, and I think I once tried to figure it out. I think I write maybe 2 words per minute, which is not a lot. Imagine if we would talk in that speed, you wouldn't even finish your introduction tonight.
I'm glad that you still
I can
do that. Yeah,
talk faster than I write.
Yeah, that too. But that you still write your stories. But I was thinking perhaps we should just read a short snippet of Agnes so that the audience get introduced. I don't know how many of you have already read the book in question.
Does anybody speak German? Oh, some of you. So we said I would just read 1 page, and
I will read the Swedish translation.
Okay. Just so you get the sound. Agnes ist tot. Eine Geschichte hat sie getötet. Nichts ist mir von ihr geblieben als diese Geschichte. Sie beginnt an jenem Tag vor 9 Monaten, als wir uns in der Chicago Public Library zum ersten Mal trafen. Es war kalt, als wir uns kennenlernten, kalt wie fast immer in dieser Stadt. Aber jetzt ist es kälter und es schneit. Über den Michigansee kommt der Schnee und kommt der böige Wind, der selbst durch das Isolierglas der großen Fenster noch zu hören ist. Es schneit, aber der Schnee setzt sich nicht. Er wird weitergeweht und bleibt nur liegen, wo der Wind nicht hingelangt. Ich habe das Licht gelöscht und schaue hinaus auf die beleuchteten Spitzen der Wolkenkratzer, auf die amerikanische Flagge, die der Wind irgendwo im Licht eines Scheinwerfers hin und her schlägt, und weit hinunter auf die leeren Plätze, wo selbst jetzt, mitten in der Nacht, die Ampeln von grün zu rot und von rot zu grün wechseln, als sei nichts geschehen, als geschehe nichts. Hier habe ich mit Agnes gewohnt, in dieser Wohnung, für kurze Zeit. Wir waren hier zu Hause, aber jetzt, wo Agnes gegangen ist, ist mir die Wohnung fremd und unerträglich geworden. Nur 1 Zentimeter Glas trennt mich von Agnes, nur 1 Schritt, aber die Fenster lassen sich nicht öffnen.
Agnes är död. En berättelse dödade henne. Allt jag har kvar av henne är den här berättelsen. Den började den där dagen för 9 månader sedan när vi träffades för första gången på Chicago Public Library. Det var kallt när vi träffades. Kallt som nästan alltid i den här stan. Men nu är det ännu kallare och det snöar. Över Michigansjön kommer snön. Kommer den bya vinden som hörs till och med genom isolerglaset i de stora fönstren. Det snöar, men snön lägger sig inte. Den fortsätter yra och blir bara liggande där vinden inte når den. Jag har släckt ljuset och tittar ut på skyskrapornas upplysta toppar, på amerikanska flaggan som slår hit och dit i vinden i ljuset från en strålkastare och på de folktomma platserna långt där nere där trafikljusen till och med nu, mitt i natten, slår om från grönt till rött och från rött till grönt som om inget hade hänt, som om inget händer. Här bodde jag med Agnes, i den här lägenheten, en kort tid. Det här var vårt hem. Men nu när Agnes har lämnat mig känns lägenheten främmande och outhärdlig. Bara 1 centimeter glas skiljer mig från Agnes. Bara 1 steg. Men fönstren går inte att öppna. So that's the first page. A real famous page, I would say, because of its first sentence, mostly. You start off by killing your main character. Or
Yeah.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it was actually the first sentence I wrote.
Yeah.
I mean, I made some notes, of course, but then that was when I have an idea. It can take a very long time from the idea till I find the first sentence. Not in this case, but I had ideas that took me 20 years to find this first sentence and to find somehow the point of attack where I can start the story. Because its first sentence is not only what's in the first sentence, it's also when is it and where is it and the rhythm, and is it a first person or a third person. So there are lots of things in the first sentence.
Mm-hmm. You write in another text that you like to pose a question or put a question in the first sentence. This is not the case here, but
no, that's not what I wanted to say. It's actually a citation from a friend of mine, Judith Kuckert, a German writer, and she says that a book is with her. A book is always starts with a question. It doesn't start. I mean, it's not the first sentence, but there is a question behind every book. So it's not so much an idea as more a question.
Which this contains then. Who is Agnes and why is she dead?
And what happens when we make images of ourselves and these images get out of control, these kinds of things. So it's like an experiment in physics that you somehow set up a situation and then you light something or you put something in motion and then you see what happens. I think that's what you wanted to say. That you don't know the outcome when you start writing.
I think it's wonderful that you have been so transparent with your where you got the things for the story. Like you told us about the name before, that it was supposed to be a Danish name. You also write on your homepage about different characteristics of Agnes that you got from your father, one, or
From different
from
people, yeah.
different people that you collected and gathered throughout the years. Is that something that did you do that because you have had a lot of questions about? I mean, thinking about the Swiss journalist slash author in the book, have you had a lot of autobiographical questions about him, for instance? Is that why you want to?
Yeah, sometimes people, especially in schools, they never believe you. If you have a book that's written in the first person and you say it's not me, it's just him, they just don't believe you. If you say I, it's you. I mean,
Yeah.
and you can argue as much as you want. Yeah, and when he's a Swiss guy and he's writing, of course it's me. I mean, but I'm not him.
But one thing that I read about the whole history of the book was that the whole Pullman strike theme in the book. Pullman was a train builder in the States, right?
Yeah, luxury train cars.
Luxury train
They
cars.
still exist, I think, Pullman cars.
I think there's a restaurant at the train station here in Gothenburg called Pullman, when I think about it. But anyways, that came by accident. You wanted to check out the Pygmalion story in an encyclopedia.
And then I saw Pullman strike. I knew Pullman already. And then when I saw Pullman strike, I thought, what is this? I always say to the school pupil, that's the good thing about not having Google, because when you Google something, you just find what you're looking for. But when you actually open a book, then you find all the things that are before it and after it, and so that's why you find Pullman when you are looking for Pygmalion. And of course, I had a love to trains already, so I wouldn't have chosen it if I was a car driver. I like to take trains. I have spent many nights on night trains, and so it's in my blood somehow.
But how much research do you do in real life? Or, I mean, do you go out? You went to Chicago, obviously. But
Yeah. Oh, I had been there when I started to write the book. It depends on the book. I mean, for Agnes, I didn't have to do much research. But for other books, when I did the 7 years, that's taking place in an architect's office. Do you say an office? Or, I actually went to an architect and asked if I could spend a week there to just see how they work, because I didn't know what they actually do. I mean, they build houses, but how do you do that? So I just hung around that place and watched them doing their job.
all right.
Which is fun. I mean, the research is the easiest part when you write a book, and not the most fun part, but it's really, yeah, it's good to just. And mostly people are really open to questions. Most people, if you say you're writing a book, then you say, sure, come on. And the only time when I had problems was when I also in the last novel was about a woman that has her face destroyed by an accident, and I wanted to talk to those doctors who do reconstruction, and they are all so busy that I had to talk to 3 of them until someone really took his time and talked to me for some time. The first one just stopped answering my emails after a while. I had too many questions.
All right. But you still do a lot of research in books then, or
Not in books, no. Mostly it's in real life. Because you won't find a book that tells you how an architect works. You'll find thousands of books about great architects, but that wasn't what I wanted to know. It was actually, what do they do when they come to their office in the morning? And an average architect, not the best in the world. Really the guy who builds normal houses. So most of research is really real world research. Not much reading.
I think in the reviews of your books, you always get praised for the fact that you write about normal people living their everyday life. And I think you said in an interview once that you couldn't write about extreme situations like a war or something like that, because you observed the normal
Well, if I had lived through a war, I could probably write about it, but I haven't, luckily. And as Swiss society, as probably the Swedish, is a very satisfied, rich and relaxed society. That's my world. So I think writers should always write about their world because that's the only thing they know. And I don't really like books about the Second World War that are written today by people who haven't even lived in that time, because I think it's just pretending to know something you can't know.
We said in the beginning that Agnes was released in '98, 17 years ago, and you're still talking about it today because we have a new Swedish translation. We have a film coming next year in Germany, the film version of Agnes, and it's also like a mandatory thing to read in some German schools. You have to read Agnes in order to get your exam. Right?
Yeah, for your high school exams.
How many talks, discussions like this have you done around Agnes?
Lots. Last week I just had 10 school readings with an average of maybe 300 school children being there, and I had up to 900 in an auditorium. So I've done lots of them, yeah, because there are tens of thousands of people who have to read it. Poor fellows. I always tell them at least it's a thin book. I mean, even if you don't like it, it's much thinner than
War
Tin Drum or War and Peace or whatever.
For sure. But can she still surprise you?
Yeah. Sometimes just last week when I was reading it, I realized something that I had never thought about before. So it does happen, yeah.
There is, the in focus is the relationships between the narrator and Agnes, of course, but there is also a woman called Louise. So it's a bit of a ménage à trois going on there, which you also have in 7 years. And I think relationships is also one of the things that's really something of your interest, like, or
well,
how to, or love perhaps.
I mean, for Swiss people, what's the tragedies in your life? It's usually love or death. I mean, that's the two things that even to Swiss people happen. Even to Swiss people, we don't have wars. We don't have, I don't know. So that's the big themes in literature: love and death. And the good thing also about relationships is that everything is possible. It's like I always say, it's like in painting the human body. It's so rich. It's much more interesting to paint the human body than to paint a shoe, because a shoe is always about the same, but a body can be so many different things. And the same with relationships. There are so many relationships, and you can invent whatever you want. Everything somewhere out there is existing.
But this book, 7 Years, was inspired by Witold Gombrowicz, a play by the Polish author called Iwona, Princess of Slavonia, or something.
Of Burgundy, I think.
Oh, Burgundy, sorry. Yeah. What was it that inspired you in his play?
It wasn't even inspired by the play. It was inspired by a review of the play that I read in a very short one. And they said the play was about whether someone who loves me has power over me, just by the fact that she loves me, even if I don't love her. And that was a question that immediately interested me. Of course, afterwards I have read the play. I don't even like it that much, but the question I thought was very interesting. If you have power over people by just loving them.
And
so again, it's a question in the beginning of a book. It's not a theme. It's really a question.
And going back to Agnes, is that the same case there? That one of the two main characters, is there an inequality in their love?
I don't think so. I think they are both in love. They just somehow don't manage to get along. But I think they love each other.
And for 7 years, you said you spent some time in an architect's bureau because it's a married couple. They're both architects. They look a bit like, or I imagine them as like the prom queen and the prom king. They're very good looking, very socially skilled, and the man Alexander, he doesn't fall in love, but he's very attracted to a very ugly woman it's from the beginning it's a stupid bet with his friend that you can't get her into bed.
Yeah.
And was that and you feel sorry for the other woman, of course.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you said, she has perhaps more power over him than
Somehow,
vice
yeah.
versa.
I needed a character that has only her love. I mean, that's the only thing she has. She doesn't look good. She's not intelligent. She's an illegal immigrant, so she doesn't even have a social status. So everything is against her. The only thing she has is her love for him, and that was really an experiment. What happens if you put these two together? And he gets angry about her, so he treats her very badly sometimes, just to somehow. I think he's angry because she has this power over him, and that's yeah. I had quite a few people who protested that you couldn't do that in a book. I mean, they were almost angry about the book, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think books should move us in some way, even if you get angry about them. That's fine.
I was all the time questioning myself why I don't dislike Alexander more, because he is a real bastard towards her. But it
Maybe you recognized yourself.
could be, could be. But is it hard to write? Is it hard to get this mixed feelings into a literary character, you think, or does that come naturally for you?
It's usually I realize that usually the male characters are less nice than the female in my books. The women are usually I prefer the women, my women, because I especially when I write from the point of view of the man. With yourself, you're usually more critical than with other people. I mean, when I fall in love, then I'm in love, and I won't criticize the woman. But I myself know how I am, so I'm probably more critical about myself than about other people.
But does that go for? Because I know that a lot of people have been pretty upset about Sonia, the wife of Alexander in the book as well. But I don't see her as a bad person.
No,
actually.
no. I think I mean, she has this guy who's not really the ideal husband, so she has to somehow take to pull the cart out of the dirt, you would say in German. Karren aus dem Dreck ziehen. I mean, she has to be the strong person in the relationship because he isn't.
No, and he gets he becomes the father of a child with Ivona, not the wife, and the wife and him, they decide on an adoption, and that's a really hard thing for all three of them, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit strange to adopt the child that your husband has had with his lover. That's maybe a bit unusual, but it can happen. I mean, and it's the best in a way. For the child, it's the best thing because her mother couldn't have her. So, yeah. But it's unusual, I admit.
But at the same time, during this somehow unusual love affair or sex affair, perhaps, it's also a book about architecture, I think. You quote Le Corbusier, and Sonia is very fond of him. How come? Why? What did you want to show with her fondness of that architecture?
When I come to people's houses, I always look what books they read and what music they have and what paintings they have on the walls. So that says a lot about you, and I think even your loves say a lot about you. If you love Le Corbusier, you're probably a different person than if you love Aldo Rossi, who is the other major architect that is in the book. And Le Corbusier is like Sonia. I mean, I think, is it in the book or maybe not, that his buildings always look as if they had no keller, no cellar.
Cellar, yeah.
I mean, they are transparent, they are clean, there is no hidden things in them, and that's beautiful. I like them very much, but somehow it's not. Life is not like that. I mean, he had this idea of this ideal person that would live in his ideal houses, but we are not ideal persons. So, in a way, I think I wouldn't want to live in one of those houses. They are very beautiful, but they are not very humane in a way. And I just talked to Peter Zumthor, the architect, and he told me what he likes, and his buildings are completely different from Le Corbusier. He has like hidden things and small passages. So, I mean, it's really, they're very, you feel very well in these buildings because you can hide in the building, and you can, it's almost sometimes like caves where you can hide. And Le Corbusier is not like that, and Sonia is not like that.
In an interview, you said that you wanted to have a room full of bad taste, or a room of bad taste.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, I know. You don't have that room, I suppose.
Almost. We just bought one of those lava lamps.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that?
Yeah.
And the children, somehow, we had a small room and guest room actually, and then they wanted me to put my old record player there, so they can listen to all my strange records. And then we thought we needed a lava lamp and some ugly paintings, as not paintings but posters. So we are working on the room. Yeah.
All right. That's good.
Well, I mean, Sonia would be the person where the apartment would be perfect. I once had a friend in New York, and when you took a book from his table and you put it back, then he would put it like that, because everything was perfect in his apartment. Couldn't live there.
Wow. But because I listened to the Granta interview, I think that's the place where you talked about the bad taste room, and you talked about how people, or how buildings change people, and
I think so,
how we're influenced by buildings. And you also talked about the fact that you don't believe in change. You don't believe that people change actually, and in your books, perhaps they don't. What's your thoughts around that today? Your new novel, for instance, do people in that one change throughout the text?
No. And it's 20 years, the whole, from the beginning to the end. No, I don't think that people change a lot. I mean, of course you change a little bit, or maybe you get more things that are maybe hidden in the beginning get out when you get older or something like that. But I don't think that you can become a completely different person. When I have a meeting of my old school that I went to 30 or 35 years ago, everybody's still the same. The guy who told the stupid jokes, still telling the stupid jokes. Maybe he's bald now, but he's still the same. And I'm probably still the same. But when I say rooms change people, I don't mean that they change people in a way that they are completely different afterwards, but they do something with us. I mean,
sure.
You feel different in a good room than in a bad room. There are lots of bad rooms.
I'm going to come back to Agnes once more, and because she also wants to write in the book. She tries to write a short story, and that's pretty much a disaster. I think it's a text that would embarrass not only you but also Ernest Hemingway. And the writer, the narrator, says that, why do you try to write? You don't even read. So I suppose it's that the best tip for someone who wants to write, to read a lot?
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure. I don't think that you can write naive as you can paint. I mean, there are some painters who were naive but even them, they probably knew paintings, and they, even Douanier Rousseau, I guess he knew paintings. I don't think that he was completely naive, and I guess you can't be naive writing, probably. So it would probably be good to read, yeah. But then you still have to find your own style. So not reading to copy other authors, but just to see what you can do with language.
Did that take you long to arrive at your style, so to say?
I think it took me from 20 to 35. I mean, I did other things in that time. I studied and I worked as a journalist, but I think that's about the time it took me, yeah. Sometimes funny when you see... I once saw an exhibition of Rothko, the famous American painter, and with the big just colors.
The squares.
Yeah. And they had some early paintings by him that were terribly ugly. I mean, he painted like some Greek... and ancient Greek characters, and really, really ugly paintings. And then there was a moment, and you realized it was probably within 1 week that he switched, and then he started his colors, and then it was almost from the very beginning it was the same, and it was perfect. So sometimes I think it's like it happens very quickly sometimes, but you have to... Maybe you have to go the wrong way for a very long time, and then suddenly you see the light or whatever.
All right. You get a lot of appraisal for your sparse style, your reduced style, and that is also one of the things, characteristics that I like about the way you write. Was that something you had to work yourself into, or you might not agree with me at all?
Well, it's a very reduced style, sure. But the thing is that the mean thing is that you can't work to find your style, because it's not something you can... I mean, if you have dirty dishes and you wash them, then they are clean. But to find your style is more like... I mean, it's there all the time, and then you have to somehow get rid of all the other stuff. And that's the bad thing about reading, that you see how all the others write, and then there is a tendency, especially with young authors, to just copy other writers. Thomas Bernhard is a perfect... half of the young writers, when I started writing, were copying Thomas Bernhard. And then you have to somehow find your style. It's not develop your style, but really find it in yourself. And that can be difficult, yeah. Because you have to be honest, and you have to be patient, and...
All right. Are there any questions in the audience tonight? Yeah?
Just wait for the microphone.
Oh.
I have been writing stories since I was 4th grade, and I really want to be a writer. So, what do you got?
Well, I mean, at some point, you have just to send them to a publisher. That's... but you shouldn't do it too early. I mean, if you do it too early, then they will just send them back and tell you they are not good enough, and then you have to somehow be strong enough to not despair and to try again. But I always say, young authors, the main problem is not finding a publisher. The main problem is to write a good story or a good novel. Novels are easier to sell than short stories. That's just a fact. I guess it's the same in Sweden. It's just because most readers prefer novels. But there are always... I don't know about Sweden, but there must be literary journals where you can...
For sure, yeah.
Where you can... who publish stories. And
I have wrote short stories, and I have wrote a lot, but I haven't, published them.
You haven't what?
I have wrote
Published them, yeah.
I have wrote a lot of stories on my own, and have them at home at my computer, but nobody knows about them.
Well, a library is a good place to look for literary journals. There must be lots of them, and then I would just look for them or ask a librarian. I mean, they know what there is, and then maybe just look at them, and if you see that they do things that are not so far from what you are doing, then you just should send them to them.
I really have asked my teacher for help, and a lot of people, but I didn't get the help that I wanted to publish my stories.
They have... Sorry?
I have asked a lot. I have asked my teachers for help, and I got here too and asked them, but I didn't get that help that I wanted. So I don't know what
Well,
to
nobody can really help you to publish something.
do. I mean, lead me or show me the way.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
It's like a market. I mean, you can't help someone to publish something. It's the guys who decide what's published. That's the publishers and the people at the magazines who decide, and nobody can really help you with that. You probably have just to send them, and if they are not accepted, you shouldn't despair. You shouldn't try it 50 times with the same story. Then maybe the story is not good enough, and then maybe you have to go on and work on the story. Or start a new one. Sometimes it's easier to start a new story and really work for a long time till you really think it's good. And when you think it's good, then yeah, then you have to try it. But
We have a new question here.
I was thinking about the main characters of both 7 Years and Agnes are men.
Mhm.
And you said something about sympathizing with more with the women. But my question is actually, I think I read a short story where the main character is a woman. But what do you prefer, or how does it
I've
differ?
actually even written two novels where the main character is a woman, from the point of view of the woman. I can't really say which one I prefer. It's fun to. I mean, I'm not a cross-dresser. I don't put on women's clothes and hang around in bars. But as a writer, it's fun to pretend to be a woman sometimes. But the decision is not whether I feel like being a woman or a man. It's really like, what do I need? And the second novel, Unformed Landscape, that the first one that I wrote from the point of view of a woman, actually I wanted to write it from the point of view of the man. And then I realized that the woman was much more interesting. The man was a guy who is a liar, who invents all his life and makes up his whole life. And when I wanted to write it, I realized he's not an interesting person, because a liar is not interesting, because for him it's just his whole life is a lie. And then I thought it would be much more interesting to write about from the point of view of his wife, who finds out that he's a liar. And that's why I had to take the woman's point of view. And it was fun. I like both.
I read 7 Years a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It really gripped me. And when I started with Agnes, about when it was released, I somehow felt, if you could talk about this, there are similarities with the protagonist, because to me it seemed like men who weren't really present in their own lives. There were sort of choices were made, but they didn't really commit, and they just went on and things happened.
Yeah. Yeah, many of my characters are like that. I mean, I would say when you read an author, Thomas Bernhard, again, is a good example. I mean, all his characters are about, not the same, but they are all very closely related, I would say. So I think each author has his preferred persons. Maybe I prefer people who don't really make decisions, because anything can happen to them. My brothers, for example, they are both engineers. When they were 8 years old, they knew what they wanted to become. And, well, they said inventor, but an inventor is an engineer, and they became inventors. And their lives are like that. And my life, because I didn't know what to do, was like that. So I probably encountered many more things than they. I love my brothers. That's not a criticism. So in a way, when you don't know where you go, then more things happen to you. That's maybe why they are more interesting to me, these people.
But is that also the case when you write a story? That, because you said before that you want to you work a lot to get that first sentence. But do you know where to go from that?
No.
I mean, there are authors that have a master plan.
Yeah, no,
This
I
is
don't.
going to
Never
be-
have that.
No, okay.
No, I did in the novels that I wrote before Agnes. I worked like that, and I realized it doesn't work for me. I need this freedom of being able to go wherever I want, or wherever the text leads me. I've compared the first sentence to the ein Keim bei einer Pflanze.
A seed.
A seed in a way, and that's of course the seed won't. If you take a seed from a lemon, it will not be an oak afterwards. It will be a lemon tree, but you don't really know. The lemon tree develops according to the surrounding and where it grows and how in what climate it grows. So in a way, it's a seed, and then I watch it growing.
I think we have a question there.
Hi. So I was reading Agnes like 6 months ago or so, and what I really felt when I read it was that it was very typical for our time, like, because it was published '98, right? And but today, when you read literature, it's a lot about memory and about how you work with memory and how memory works for people. I just wonder how the situation, when you like got a grip about this topic, how like really as common then, or is it like were you before our time in some sense?
I think when I am in schools, I think it's much more actually in a way as it used to be when I wrote it, because everybody's making pictures now. Everybody's even creating his own picture of himself on Facebook, and we're all not only making pictures of the others, but also of ourselves. So in a way, it has become more
Up to date.
In a way, yeah. But I mean, as I said, for me, it was more like images we make ourselves in our minds, and that goes back to Plato, the Höhlengleichnis, the cave image, where he says we can never see reality, we just see images of reality. So it's a very old theme in a way. It just has, through computers, it has become more pressing in a way today. Because we not only force other people with the images we make of themselves, we also force ourselves to be someone else by the pictures we make of ourselves. Because your Facebook profile is probably completely different from yourself, and if you constantly show yourself as the guy who's always partying and going on holidays and having a beautiful girlfriend, and then it's somehow you simplify yourself by creating these images, and there is a pressure to be like everybody else, because everybody else has the same Facebook account, and you don't there is no space for darker sides of your personality on Facebook.
Speaking about images, what was it like to see the film, Agnes?
It was great. It's really a beautiful film. I didn't see the final version, but the almost final version. And it's first of all the actors are great, and Agnes doesn't look like I imagined Agnes, but she's very beautiful in that role. And he didn't choose Chicago. He couldn't afford to go to Chicago, so he took Düsseldorf, which is almost as good. I mean, it works completely. You don't have to go to Chicago. Maybe if I would write a book today, I would choose Düsseldorf or some other minor town. And he had a great cameraman, cameraman.
I think,
yeah, who made beautiful images. So I think it's really a good film. Yeah, I like it.
Was this the first book that got its film, or
I had
short
two
stories?
Short stories where they made short films of half an hour, so which is almost. I mean, it's not a long film, but it's still a real film. And there was an Austrian guy who made one of my radio plays into a very strange film, and a French guy who made one of my short stories in a long film that was released and was in the cinemas for about 2 days, I think.
Okay.
For some reasons, yeah.
All right. Do we have more questions? Well, I think we're about out of time as well. So thanks a lot for listening to us tonight, and of course, super thanks a lot, Peter Stamm, that you came. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.